What about the cycle of infection of influenza? As we all know, the chain or cycle of infection consists of 6 elements: the infectious agent, the reservoir and source of infection, the portal of exit, the mode of transmission, the portal of entry, and susceptible host. The agent, we speak in details about the agent, and now this is the reservoir of infection. And besides the human as a reservoir for influenza, type A virus strains also affect animals. The most common animal: aquatic birds, ducks, turkey, chicken, geese, in addition to pigs, horses, and seals. Type B and C circulate only in human. That's why human is the only reservoir for type B and C influenza viruses. Influenza type D, this is primarily affect the cattle, not the human, are not known to infect or cause illness in human. It's not a human virus from the start. The source of infection is discharge from the nose and the throat. And portal of exit is a respiratory system where organisms leave via the mouth and the nose. And the inlet is also the respiratory orifices, which is the mouth and the nose. Let us to see how influenza is transmitted. If we have an infected person, the droplets will come out from the respiratory orifices. According to the size of the droplet, we have the small sized droplet, medium sized droplet, and we have a large sized droplet. The small sized droplet evaporated into the air, forming what is called the aerosol or droplet nuclei, which is inhaled by the susceptible host. And this type of transmission is known as a droplet nuclei airborne transmission. The medium-sized particles, by force of talking, sneezing, or coughing of the infected person, travel directly to the mucosal surface of the susceptible host, and this type of transmission is known as a droplet contact transmission. And this is the most common mode of transmission for influenza. But it required that the distance between the infected person and susceptible host is very short, less than 1 meter. The large sized particle deposited on surfaces and forming what is called a fomites or a contaminated surfaces. And by contact behavior, bad personal hygiene, it is transmitted by the indirect contact to the susceptible host, and this type of transmission is known as the indirect contact transmission. And that's why the influenza is transmitted by 3 methods: droplet contact transmission, droplet nuclei airborne transmission, and indirect contact transmission through the contaminated surfaces. So this is the incubation period of disease for influenza is from 1 to 4 days with an average of 2 days. And the main mode of transmission is the droplet contact. The influenza virus is spread from person to person primarily through the medium-sized particle respiratory droplet. When an infected person cough, sneeze, or talk near a susceptible host, approximately less than 1 meter at a distance from the infected person. Also, influenza could be transmitted by indirect contact transmission via the hand transfer of influenza virus from virus contaminated surfaces. This is the fomites or inanimate objects which could be contaminated, transmitted to the mucosal surface of the face through the nose or the mouth. Also, we have another mode of transmission, which is the airborne transmission through the droplet nuclei via the small particles. Aerosol in vicinity of infectious individual may also occur. All respiratory secretions and body fluids, including the diarrheal stool of patients with influenza, could be considered to be potentially infectious. However, the risk may vary by strain, and detection of influenza virus in blood stool of influenza infected patient is very rare. What about the period of communicability? In adults, communicability is 3 to 5 days starting from the onset of the clinical manifestations, while communicability in children is more longer, and the virus is shedding for a longer period extending up to 7 to 10 days. Susceptibility and resistance. We consider all people are susceptible with appearance of a new subtype, except those who lived through earlier epidemics or pandemics caused by a related subtype. Post-infection immunity is a type specific against the infecting virus, but its extent and duration vary widely. It depends on host factors, degree of antigenic drift in the virus, period of time since previous infection.